Hey guys, what's up? So I'm going to share a game that we actually played in a lesson yesterday. So I've got a new student, a young player called Ryan, and this is our second lesson. Our first lesson we played a bot game. This is what we tend to do in lessons. I'll have the student talk through out loud what do they see on the board, what are they reading on the board, and from there, what is the problem we want to solve, what are the candidate moves. And something we've been working on in this lesson in particular is adding one candidate move, rather than just saying, well, that's obvious, can I see a problem with it? No, let's play it. Okay, so we played against Nelson, which is many people's nemesis, and we did rather well. So let me take you through the game, and I'll try and share as well some of the points at which we stopped, and I tried to get Ryan to think of another move or an alternative move. Okay, so we have e4, e5. We've got the black pieces. So mad old Nelson, of course, goes with the Wayward queen attack. Ryan knows what to do. So at this point, he's rated like 1067 rapid. But that's going to change. Okay, so we have knight c6. The point is that this Wayward queen attack is not really targeting f7. The actual target is the undefended e5 pawn. So if you go Vienna style, you play out your queen's knight, we're defending that pawn. That's the first blow parried. And now we have bishop c4. So going for, obviously, a scholar's mate on f7. Now, the biggest blunder here would be something like knight f6, just blundering mate on f7 with queen takes f7 mate. So here we play a good move, pawn g6, okay? And that obviously attacks the queen and prevents the queen from taking there. The queen comes back, as is typical, to the f3 square. Again, just kind of re-triangulating around, now looking again down at f7, so still you've got to be careful. But here you can play knight to f6, or you can play queen to f6. Now, I think a lot of the time in the past, I've played queen f6, which is slightly less accurate. So when you play queen f6 here, you have this situation of tension between the queens. And neither player really wants to take because it allows their opponent to develop their king's knight for free. So it's a bit kind of boring. The queens just look at each other until one of them wanders off. Okay. However, I remembered seeing in a video by Daniel Naroditsky recently where I think he faced the Wayward queen attack that he played the move knight to f6, which makes a lot of sense, right? It's principled. We develop minor pieces before queen, right? We resolve this issue. There is no issue of that anymore. And we're going to likely fianchetto our bishop and just castle and crack on with the game. All right. We have knight h3 from Nelson. And this is a bit of an odd move, right? And I really do feel like the chess.com bots are kind of, they can play like AlphaZero when they want to, right? Or they at least go full fish on you. But it does feel like they're programmed to do dumb things every now and again. Now, humans also do dumb things every now and again, but I don't know, it's a different kind of dumb. It's more meat-based dumb. It's kind of biological dumb. Not just dumb. No, it's random dumb. Random moves, that's what it is. All right, so here, what do we want to do? Well, we are in the opening phase of the game. We want to fianchetto this bishop. I mean, this bishop does actually have scope as well down this diagonal. So we just proceed with bishop g7, right? It extra defends the knight. The computer didn't like that move, actually. The computer preferred knight d4 immediately, threatening the queen and c7. Okay, but we play bishop g7. It's the third best move. Next best was actually d5. Right? I think we considered as well, we had a long conversation about d6, but then also d5 as an alternative, and which would be better. So right now, obviously, white has 3 attackers on there. We only have 2 defenders, knight and queen. But anyway, we do this, and now Nelson throws his knight in. Okay, but we figured, right? So you have to ask yourself the question, why does he play his knight here? Well, is he attacking this? But then you count. Okay, well, we have time. Fianchetto, knight comes into attack, castles, just in time. And now it really doesn't make sense. This, in general, guys, if you're attacking, although this seems to be an equal trade, 6 materials for 6 materials, it's not. Why? Well, for one thing, if white was to take, say, let's say bishop takes, rook takes, knight takes, king takes, okay? Yeah, so a rook and a pawn is worth 6, a knight and a bishop is worth 6, but white ends up with 1 piece fewer. Okay, so after that position, black will have 1 rook and 3 minor pieces. No, all 4 minor pieces. Okay, so he's lost these 2. Okay, white has lost these 2, so white will have 2 rooks and 2 minors. So white's got 4 pieces left, just not counting queens, right? Black has 5 pieces left. And later on in the game, that difference could show very easily. It gives just black more options. Another thing is, look at what white's got developed, right? Why does white want to spend 2 moves trading off his 2 pieces that he's already invested time to develop? Doesn't make sense. Anyway. So, Nelson now castles. And now we have a discussion. We think about this move, okay? We think about a couple of options. We were thinking about d6 or d5 and then bringing the bishop out to g4. And we were also thinking about the move knight to d4, which when you've got your queen's knight out, like it feels very Vienna-y, you know. And the queen ends up here or here. It's a very common attacking idea to throw your knight into d4 in case of black, or d5 in case of white, and try and attack the c-pawn and attack the queen wherever she may be. Okay, so we're thinking, well, where's the queen going to go? So she could, you see, if we go here, she can't go there. Sorry, can't go there because knight takes. She can't go here, so she might go there. She can't go here as well because knight to e2 is a royal fork and king and queen, so that's out. So she got some options. So in the end, we decided to play knight d4. And the queen retreats all the way to d1, which is actually the most accurate move. But now black has a slight edge. Look at us, we are castled. We've got a very nice fianchetto bishop situation. Yes, our pawn on e5 is kind of obscuring the bishop, but you know, that's the thing about bishops, right? So now we have a discussion. Okay, well, do we push d6 or d5? Because d6 is the obvious one. It's like we make a pawn chain, we allow our bishop out. What could be wrong with it? Well, then we looked at this. We went, well, what if d5? And if pawn takes, we have knight takes. We've got 2 knights in the center. That's not a bad thing. We kind of maybe open up this bishop. So we pushed pawn to d5, which is actually slightly more accurate according to the engine. Nelson pushes d3 in response and simply blunders a piece. All right? Random. Okay? Now, so we're in a good position. We capture the bishop. Nelson retreats his knight. Okay? And now we're having a think. Okay? We've got ideas of bishop g4 to pin the knight. And also we've got ideas of capturing the knight. Capture the knight, okay. The queen will take, and then we could play bishop g4. And where's the queen going to go, right? Queen can move. But you have to play with your move order. So here, I mean, this was our first idea. Look, I can take the knight, queen comes out, I can attack the queen. Woohoo! We're attacking a queen, right? But when you see a 2-move sequence, just try looking at it the other way around. So my suggestion was, okay, here's another candidate move, right? Bishop g4, and then we take. How does that look? Well, think it through. Right, bishop g4. Now, what if, for example, so yeah, bishop g4, we're threatening to capture the knight, and queen can't take because bishop takes queen. That's a very different prospect. So first we apply the pressure, and then we bite. Right? Rather than bite, recapture, bite. You know? Very different. Now what if then we have to consider bishop g4, h3? Bishop g4, h3 changes nothing. We capture the knight with check. White has to eliminate the knight, and he's not going to do it with the queen. He's going to have to capture with a pawn. And if he captures with that pawn, this is looking good for us, okay? So, bishop g4 is the move. Nelson now plays bishop d2. Bit of a random one here. And again, we have an interesting discussion, okay? We can snatch at this with either piece, and Nelson's going to have to recapture with the g-pawn. And I know a lot of players, around this kind of 1,000, 1,100 level will go, that'll do me, that's good enough. And it is, this is absolutely fine. And black is -4 at this point, right? We are crushing Nelson because he's blundered the whole piece and he's behind, right? But then I said, well, find another candidate move. So we're kind of shuffling around. We could, various ideas, get the queen off the back rank, I don't know. And then Ryan said, well, I don't know, c takes? And then he goes like, no. But then I said, let's think it through. Because, I mean, one of our issues is this pawn is actually just hanging. Right? Now, yes, we're winning the game. But this is me also practicing, channeling my own evil. Another thing to consider is, well, what if c3, pawn to c2 to c3, right? We have a lovely knight in the center of the board. Why give it up? So, we stop. We talk it through. Okay, well, look, what if we take here? But then what if c3 anyway? And then this is a real, and it took us a few minutes. So, okay, think it through. You now have a pawn on d3. Visualize it. Practicing this visualization is absolutely key. You have a pawn on d3, right? What is your pawn on d3? This black pawn, what is it controlling? Well, it's controlling this and this. Okay, so if we take here, that is now a black pawn, if you visualize, right? They push, what do we have? Well, this is a black pawn. We can bring our knight into either of these squares, right? And knight to c2, even if the c2 pawn has moved to c3, we still win the rook because the rook can't move, right? Why can't the rook move? Because Nelson's failed to complete development in 11 moves. Okay, so we take the pawn. Nelson actually recaptures here. And now we have a think. Okay, well, what do we want to do? Well, is it time to strike at this knight? And we have to think through knight takes with check. So we've got knight takes with check, g takes f3, and then is there a situation with our bishop? Right? Knight takes, g takes, our bishop's under attack and can't capture here because we just lose the piece. So knight takes, g takes, our bishop has to move. Now, can our bishop move there? Well, no, they can because there's no g pawn. So in theory, it can move back. Or bishop takes, pawn takes, which is better? So I won't go over all of the logic for that, but we decide we like our knight in the center of the board, and we decide to that our knight is actually, because it also comes, well, we have the option of knight coming in with check, and we also wanted to retain the option of knight c2, maybe to win the rook. So we take with the bishop here, and obviously the g pawn takes. And now again a critical position. Obviously we're winning, right? It's still -4 in black's favor. So we both came up with the same move, queen d7. And that is candidate move number 1. It's a jolly good move. Why? Because we're planning to drop the queen into h3. That shows really good board vision, h3, we're attacking f3 as well as the knight attacking f3. Okay? But then we thought, well, okay, look, we're in a good position. Do we have to dive in screaming and with flying fists at this point? Is it the right thing to do? Or is it the right thing, from a strategic point of view, to throttle our opponent's ideas? For example, the move c5 prevents this bishop coming in and annoying our rook. Or the move b6, if the bishop then comes in, then we have c5 with tempo. Okay? So we thought that through, and we agreed, no, let's go in for the kill. So queen d7 looks like a quiet move, is not a quiet move. Let's see what the computer says here. The computer actually says knight h5 here. And then also knight to e6, retreating. So both interesting moves. Third move, rook e8. Okay. Now we didn't consider any of those moves. Right? However, we do this. Still minus 3.8. Nelson develops a knight. Now I thought Nelson here had to play king g2 to prevent queen h3. And we'll see what happens. Nelson develops a knight instead. Queen h3 comes. Bishop attacks the knight. And here, relatively straightforward finish, actually. Even at this point when we were discussing, we couldn't see necessarily a winning sequence. But lo and behold, after queen here, bishop attacks knight. Okay, what would you play? So the computer is actually also suggesting knight h5 as a winning idea, but pretty much equally as much as what we played. Knight takes f3. Okay, and we're attacking the king. King's in check. There's only two legal moves here. Queen takes or king h1. And if king h1, queen takes h2 is mate. So that's what happens in the game. You really should have just captured with the queen and lost the queen with check. But there you go. So fascinating game. I think one thing in particular very interesting from this point is that queen d7, which was the move that came to both of us apes, right? The silicon machine didn't favour that at all. It was talking about knight h5, really interesting move. It was talking about pawn to c6 actually. Now is move number 2. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And then rook e8. So it liked c6. I mean, I considered b6 and c5, but there you go. And let's have a quick look at the review on this, because we were both very pleasantly surprised. So a lot of people absolutely despise Nelson and fear Nelson and hate Nelson, but when you take your time, you think about your moves, you do it carefully. Don't get drawn into Nelson's kind of gung ho aspect. Look at this, 93%. From us, and 1900 guessed the ELO, and that's from a starting point of 1000. So I think if I'd have played that game, it would probably have said I played 2100, because it kind of uses your rapid rating as a baseline. But there you go. Nelson can be beaten, and really, right out of the opening, black was never worse in that game. So very, very interesting, very, very satisfying. And I have high hopes for this student of getting him up to 1200, 1300, 1400. And I would say in a matter of weeks rather than months, potentially. So, we've got another lesson today, in fact. So there you go. If you'd like to get some chess lessons from an imperfect and intermediate player who would love to teach you, then the link is in the description. You can get one lesson, you can get 3 as well, which comes out a bit more affordable. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful. Thank you for watching. See you soon.